So hello and welcome everyone to today's session, Virtual Reality from Storytelling to Storyliving. What we're trying to do here is to shed some light on how you can really make the most of this new medium that we're all now producing in the documentary world. We've got a lineup of some of the pioneers in this space with us today. To my left we have Anthony Geffen, who is the CEO of Atlantic Productions. He also has a production company called Alchemy VR, which has been making some of the most experimental and excellent programming of the recent years. Next to him, we have Thomas Wallner, CEO of Deep Ink, which is based in Toronto. Thomas has also been producing in the medium and has created some really useful software which might actually come in handy for some of you guys in the audience, and we'll talk about that as we go on. Next to him we have the CEO of ARTE, also the head of ARTE, the head of ZDF. Big head. Wolfgang Bergmann. Guys, so let's go straight on to, I think the best place to start would be looking at some of the projects that you guys have been working on. So Anthony, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into the space and what you've been producing recently?
I have to start.
I have to start, okay. Well, I set up a production company called Atlantic about 24 years ago, having been at the BBC. I really concentrated on, I'm quite a large production company, on the high-end projects in terms of storytelling, working for all the major broadcasters. And then we built out a graphics company because we wanted the graphics to be the best, called Zoo, and then an app company. And so it wasn't a surprise in a way to all of us when we all jointly decided we wanted to get involved in the virtual reality storytelling. And we feel this is a medium that should be driven, although we have a lot of technical people around us in this new company, which has grown to be quite a bit, well, it's a big little company, that's what I call it now. It's grown pretty fast and getting its own commissions in VR. But we wanted it to be driven by the high end, in other words, experiences that people would put a headset on and say, oh my God, that's what virtual reality can do. Here's an example of one of the many things we've done. And this particular one, we wanted to be in a, am I overrunning? Sorry. I'll move very quickly. We wanted it to be in a museum space, which is now going around the world, where people...
Australia next week, is that
Opens
correct?
on Australia next week, yep. It's sold out in the Natural History Museum in London for 6 months. It's like a rock tour, really. Anyway, this experience came back because there was a series I was making called The Great Barrier Reef with David Attenborough. And we thought it would be cool for people to dive in a submersible, this Triton submarine, with David Attenborough in virtual reality. And here, I hope, is a little taste of the teaser we made.
Virtual reality is where you can put on apparatus. I mean, basically, it's goggles and earphones. Feeding into each of your eyes are images. So that's pretty exciting. Then suddenly you realize that with virtual reality, that if you hear a noise over there, you can turn round and actually your eye will travel around and you'll see something. And suddenly you are immersed in another world.
The Triton is now in the water, and we're ready to begin our dive.
Surface, this is Nadir. Am I clear to vent, over?
Roger, Nadir, you are clear to vent, clear to vent. Up and down, okay?
In this unique virtual reality experience, I'm inside a state-of-the-art submersible with me as I explore the Great Barrier Reef as never before.
You are clear to vent, clear to vent.
Roger, venting now.
Enjoy a stunning 360-degree view of the reef as I guide you ever deeper through this extraordinary community of animals. With the help of specialist dive teams, you'll discover a wonderland of colourful corals, darting fish, and sleek reef sharks.
Look to your left.
Oh, yes, look at this.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, wow. How amazing. Oh, look at this one.
So there's a little glimpse. Now, obviously, I can't simulate totally, and we can't simulate virtuality, but you are able to look and decide where you want to look in this experience. You can go outside the submarine, you can come inside the submarine. And here's a glimpse of it at the Natural History Museum, where it's been playing, where 100 people have headsets on. And basically, you're all locked into the same experience. We've created a unique piece of software that other guys have not managed to get yet, which locks us all in so that we're all experiencing the thing at the same time in a Gear VR headset.
It's fair to say that you're making a lot of noise with this. You've gone with David Attenborough. You've distributed it at the Natural History Museum. It's sold out, from what I take it. And that's a paid-for proposition, £6.50. Was that correct? So what we're seeing here is it's clear that if you want to make if you want something to really work, the storytelling and the marketing has to be pushed particularly hard. And I think that's the case with everything that you guys are doing. Thomas, you've worked in this space and first worked with Wolfgang a few years back on a VR documentary. Can you tell the audience about that, please?
Sure, yeah. That was a project called The Polar Sea. Wolfgang had the idea, a wonderful idea, to do a 10-part series about the Northwest Passage. And we had done a lot of work in the interactive realm, and I mean, I'm speaking for you, but Wolfgang's goal was to create something interactive that wasn't just piling on facts and information in a way that sort of was more cerebral. He wanted to have something that would make you want to experience. He wanted to create a sense of experience so people would care about the Arctic. And around that time, that was about 3 years ago, something like that. Even more. And at that time, my wife actually made me aware of 360 as a medium. She showed me a clip. She's here. Thank you very much. And being a filmmaker for a long time, I realized that this could potentially be a very powerful medium. It wasn't VR yet, because 3-4 years ago, that really wasn't on the horizon yet. And so we began very early for this particular project to come up ways to use it as a storytelling medium, because that's really the hardest part of it. I remember at the time it was, the videos I saw were fun but sort of depressing in the sense that it was, some guy jumping off a cliff for a Red Bull, and I like Red Bull, but but from a narrative point, there wasn't even an example there that you could then copy or rip off. You had to kind of actually invent it yourself. And so that project ultimately on the web became a 25-minute immersive narrative documentary with characters and stories, something that had actually never been done before. And at the tail end of the project, VR started appearing on the scene, so we kind of took the best footage of and showed it as a VR clip. It was really primitive at that time. And then just to finish this elucidation, so basically at the end of that, we realized that what was sorely lacking were the tools for filmmakers to actually be able to tell a story, not just play a 360 video and actually harness its uniqueness. And so we spent the last 2 years developing software, both for broadcasters so they can distribute the stuff, and for filmmakers that they can make things for it in a way that's not intimidating.
That does seem to be a clear drawback for a lot of people. There is a very different skill set, it's fair to say, producing in VR as compared to producing in television. Wolfgang, what attracted you to move into the medium? Because it's fair to say you have been banging the drum in Europe for this for a while, but there's not that many others doing it.
It was Thomas Wallner bugging me all the time with it. And I realized he was right. He was describing this thing with Polar Sea, and it's true. We approached this idea from a truly analog point of view, because we just wanted to create like a traditional documentary. We wanted to involve artists, because we had this idea, global warming is in every mouth, but nobody really senses what it means. The only part where you really can sense it is up there, but nobody goes there, so no wonder that nobody does anything. So the idea was how can we find a language, an experience to involve more people in this experience that the people in the North have in this process of like true, complete change of their environment. And you know, we had over 2 years we worked on this project with all sorts of stupid ideas, and I don't want to get into it. But one day this guy came with I'm experimenting with 360, and I really did not know what he was talking about. And he went on and did all sorts of things and sending me emails and sheets and whatever. And one day I got a call and he said, listen, would you please come into my edit suite? That I understood, and I went there, and he made this stupid game, would you please close your eyes? Which I usually don't do if anybody asks me to do so, but I did, and he put on this stupid goggle, which is really ugly, but you can see yourself. You all look really ugly when you wear it. And I opened my eyes, and I was on a helicopter flying in the Northwest Passage and could look around. And this was like, you know, I felt like the last Apache on a horse, seeing an ICE train running fast. And you know, immediately, it was not only this, oh my God feeling you were describing, I immediately understood this is really something new. This is something new because, and then we started thinking, talking, what's after the oh my God feeling? How can we use this? How can we tell stories? How can we learn to walk and to direct in this new medium? And that's where we are. We're at the beginning, and then I infected my poor colleagues at ARTE that had to suffer all my enthusiastic speeches about it, and thank God they all found it interesting. So we launched, I think, the first VR app thanks to Tom's development, and we are collecting now content and putting it on, and surprisingly enough, there is a lot of people who are interested, and thank you for downloading the ARTE 360 app. After 3 months, I think we are already close to 100,000 downloads, which is not nothing.
So there's clear demand.
Yeah, if you have an iPhone or an Android phone in your pocket, just search for ARTE 360 VR, and then you can actually see this yourself. But don't do it now. You'll bust the internet.
With the shameless sales pitch over.
You know, just it might be interesting right after now to just show that 1 minute clip. Because
Yeah, let's roll the tape.
All right. So I'll just show you, this is just a 1 minute clip from a piece on the platform or on the ARTE app called The Edge of Space. I'm not actually showing it as a 360, I'm showing it as one of those flattened dioramas, but here, let's just have a quick look at it. It teaches you should watch your feet when you launch a balloon. So we made it up to 42 kilometers, and you can actually start to see the curvature of the Earth, which was nice. And that was a very large balloon. It was 800,000 cubic meters, and it lifts 3 tons into space, so our little light cameras didn't matter. The reason why I showed you this particular clip is because the inspiration for this clip, or for doing this film with ARTE, was actually a lithograph from the year 1900, which proves that people did 360 drone shots in the year 1900 already. And that harps back to what we just talked about, that we're dealing with a new medium. But we're actually dealing with an old dream. Because when you look at the writings in the early history of cinema, when people started seeing moving images, I mean, not on the screen, but in those little revolving things, they started to dream about what the future of cinema could be like. And what they did not describe was a projector and a screen, because that wasn't invented until a little later, they actually described the holodeck. They described 360, 3D all around you, a facsimile of the world. And the reason why we deal with screens and projectors, it's because sort of that's where we are technologically, but we've now entered that time where, through the technology of VR and filming in new kinds of ways, we're approaching the possibility of fulfilling that dream, except we don't really know how yet. And what they did is they actually attempted a kind of quasi-VR augmented reality experience, because they built a big theater on which there was a circular screen. People climbed up on this balloon replica, and then they projected the film all around them, and they felt as if they were actually flying. This was done in 1900. So we should be a little humble that, our steampunk ancestors who did this with machines and chemicals actually had this, the same wish.
At this stage, do we have any questions from the audience? No, we don't. All right, so I'll just move on. One thing we've all been discussing over the past few days is that this is a developing medium, Anthony. This is something which is actually unraveling or is developing as we move on. So as a program maker and as a filmmaker and a storyteller, how do you approach the story in the first place? How do you develop one of these things?
Well, you just throw everything you know about storytelling out the window, basically, and think again, because I think we were talking earlier, and I don't want to steal your punchline. It's like theatre, cinema, and everything merged into one. There, I stole it. If you imagine, in a lot of these films, you can be the camera, you can be anywhere, you can. There's so many possibilities. I mean, I think we were talking about it before. We have 5% of the language of how we should be making these virtual reality films, if you call it, probably with us right now, maybe even less. So we're on the beginning of a long journey. What I know is it's different than cinema, it's different than television. It's extremely exciting when you get it right and put someone in a story where they're immersed in this world. And we all have to find ways of doing that. We've done it, we're doing it in different ways, in a journey inside the body. We're doing it where we scan the pyramids, and we're going to take people inside the pyramids in different periods of time, in real space, exact replicas of what the pyramids are like now and in the past. So there's all sorts of scope you can do. We're doing a theatrical production inside it for Christmas, this Christmas. So where you are the subject inside a very well-known drama. I think it's just so exciting because it's fresh and new. And the thing about Alchemy is we realized we had to bring not just storytellers, we had to bring people from different backgrounds to collaborate together so that the storyteller can understand the possibilities of this incredibly exciting medium. What you can do with it, changing the cameras, breaking all the rules. There was a rule that you couldn't cut. Well, that's absolute rubbish. You can do what you like. You don't have to be in virtual reality all the time. You can be in 2D. You can be in 3D. You change the medium. It's a very, very exciting way to work.
Wolfgang, you've said that one thing that the app has proven to you is that there isn't enough good content out there in this medium at the moment. What needs to change for things to improve?
Well, as Anthony said, we are in the beginning of something. It's page 1, 2, or 3 of a probably very big book. My fears in the moment is that the hype and the technical development and all the high investment that's been done all over the world will speed up the whole thing, that it overheats the situations because we are, that's my thinking, at a stage where we should have time to think, time to experiment, time to learn to move in this new space, and time also to think about why are we doing this? What's the reason? I mean, is there any reason, is there any purpose to go further on with the VR? My answer is, in the moment, what I can see, there's extremely interesting first proofs of stuff you can make. It's obviously the wow thing, that you can almost be somewhere where you could never be physically present. That's clear, that's obvious. But in terms of narrating, we are just on our very first steps to understand what is possible. And I think this is a huge perspective of VR, because it's, from my point of view, not less than the merger of theater and film and performing arts.
And you are, at the moment, working on a cross-platform or cross-media project, aren't you, with the theatre?
Well, what we did is I was talking, because my background is a little bit also theater, and I was talking to theater people, and we founded a program with the head of one of the festivals in Germany, the Berliner Festspielehaus, which is a very big network for international performing arts. And we together founded a program that's called Narrative Spaces. And the idea is to invite artists from every discipline, from everywhere, but also people who are into VR and 360 photography, yet just to come together and think how to create experiences that are immersed, that immerse the audience, that immerse the audience through a goggle, or that immerse the audience through an experience you put on stage or in a space, in a room, wherever. This is the idea, and it will. We have 3 years and a little money for that, and I'm super curious what comes out.
It is interesting that there is so little support from broadcasters for this type of content at the moment. What do you think when you look at your European colleagues? Why are they not taking the same chances that you're taking in this space?
I don't know. Maybe they didn't meet early enough Thomas Wallner or Anthony. I don't know. But it's a bit the idea of ARTE. You know, we are a platform for innovation and also to do crazy stuff. And happily enough, I have colleagues that are crazy enough to join us for this project.
I think another reason is, you know, it's a difficult thing to cost at the moment, and I think that frightens people. You know, and you've obviously got an innovation fund, and what you're doing is fantastic. A lot of broadcasters are worried about it because they don't know where it's going to lead, and we've now got a new complication, if you like, it coming in, which is not a complication. It's great for the storyteller, but you've got video, which is what we're using mainly at the moment. But we're about to go tethered, and we're about to break free of what I call the on-the-rails experiences. And we're going to go into a world with these new devices from Sony and Vibe and a whole host of other people where we're connected in real time and we're able to move around those worlds. But imagine the complexities of those. But imagine they're the Hollywood movies that are coming. They're very expensive. You know, these other ones are the television movies. So it's a weird and wonderful world, but I think broadcasters should support it because I think it's a very important, it's a very good complement to a lot of things they're doing, as you've used it, but also it stimulates storytelling. And anything that stimulates storytelling helps television, in my view.
And actually, I'd like to add, we are not the only ones. Other broadcasters follow. I mean, ZDF is going to investigate the field, and I think also several ARTE partners are into the field. So it's coming.
Okay. And Thomas, you've worked with some of those companies.
Yeah, it's actually true. I would say that ARTE sort of did it first, and ARTE is sort of known for being very progressive and taking a risk and going for it. And then sometimes the others follow suit, but you know, they add their own thing to the mix. So in terms of the platform that we have, it's been licensed by other broadcasters. We're working with the Bayerische Rundfunk and NDR, Norddeutscher Rundfunk. And we're seeing a lot of interest around the world, actually, because it's always, I think what we're also doing is a lot of education. So we go to broadcasters and we train them in production sometimes. We show them how it all works. And then when they realize that it's actually perhaps not that intimidating, that it can actually be done, they'll do it. And that interests me the most because traditional broadcasters and the producers who create content for them, they really know something about storytelling. And I think that, you know, providing a platform for people to work on, to connect to the audience with, will actually help in the evolution of this medium. and understand how it works.
I mean, to be fair, people like the BBC are at the R&D stage. I just think the sooner they get out of the R&D and into some commissioning, the better. And maybe they're about to do that. I don't know, but I hope so.
You know that's I think what is the unique thing. I thought the best way to put it is to say, you know, as a broadcaster, you can now broadcast space and time. That's what you can broadcast now. Before, you can broadcast a film that is about space and time. Now you can actually broadcast a moment that your audience can actually inhabit, because you're dealing with a medium that actually alleviates that distance between what you're watching and the person watching. It breaks the fourth wall for the first time ever. And who here has experienced cinematic VR or any kind of form of VR? Could you put your hand up? Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. And the rest of you who haven't drunk the Kool-Aid yet, it's hard to describe something that you haven't experienced. It's very unique. Yeah.
But what we need are proper films. I mean, I think the real danger, certainly in America right now, is that everybody's making, you know, the 2-minute, the 1 minute, which is all great. It's like the advertising industry. But I think what we need to get this thing alive is longer stories, you know. And actually, it's interesting. People said when we produced a 20-minute piece for these theatrical experiences we've been doing, they said, oh gosh, you know, will people concentrate? They wanted double that. So it's kind of interesting. The audiences will, you know, want a proper story in this medium. I don't think I mean, it's fun to see yourself jumping off the Grand Canyon or something, but, you know, but I think we've got the opportunity here to do proper storytelling.
And will people happily wear a headset for 20 minutes plus in your experience?
Well, I think that's why we worked first in the museum setup, where we had very, very good conditions, if that makes sense. I think we've got to have lots of experiences like that to start persuading people to sit elsewhere and do that. But I believe they will. Good stories. Doesn't matter where they are. They'll go and seek them out. They'll go and seek them out at the Globe. They'll go and seek them out wherever they are on the planet. I think they will. And the headsets are getting more comfortable and much more user-friendly. And the sickness, we've done a lot of tests, because of course we've been a great hotbed for doing that. We've been able to test people coming out of the theatres where you couldn't really do it very easily at home because people don't like filling in forms. And the sort of sickness factor that was once a big issue, absolutely, it's down to 1% or below that. And I think some people just don't like putting goggles on, so that's that percentage. But that's gone. So we're getting into a very good space now. And I think if we get good content, and I think we've talked about this earlier, the real worry about VR is it'll follow the 3D curve, which is, we get all this explosion about how wonderful it is and what we can do with it, although the two mediums are very different. And then suddenly, by October, we'll be sitting here saying, what happened to VR? Because there weren't enough good experiences. And it's very important that we get some of those amazing moments that people will put a headset on wherever they are and say, wow, this medium is incredible.
So I'm sorry, I'm not that optimistic that it is going to be normal in a very close future that everybody likes to wear this goggle from morning to night, because I have to repeat, you look ugly when you wear it. and yeah, I don't know. The other thing you were saying, for the first time we are enabled to, as a broadcaster, to give, it was wonderful, to give space and time.
No, I should write that down.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You are also enabled to steal people's space and time. So
we're already doing that on the
yeah, that's true. That's true. What I would like to point out is, when I talk about we need time, it also means that I would love to have time to think about, why are we doing this? Is there any reason except the next big thing, or the next wow, that's cool, or the next what is it good for? And I think this would be great also to talk about that. Or to put it in other words, for you guys who are working on this for a long time, what would you love to do, and what would you definitely not like to do with VR?
Well, what are we doing it for? What, as a storyteller, I'm of the opinion that you don't actually need VR to tell a good story. I mean, you can use a shadow puppet play on a wall and move people if the story is really good. But we have the potential of actually really immersing someone in a story in a way that has never existed before, which is a very exciting proposition. I think I think, for instance, the kind of things that Atlantic is doing is very smart, because you are taking people in places where they can't go. You're bringing creatures back to life that, you know, are around you, that you would never be able to experience in that way. I mean, what you experience when you know, have that dinosaur in your films, in order to see the top of the dinosaur, you literally have to crane your neck and look up. So you get a sense of scale that you just do not have in a regular medium. So it can do these wonderful things, and if you start to understand them, then you maybe in the beginning, not everything is meant to be VR, and maybe there should be some thought and time put into thinking, what is it that we want to transport? I'll just give one little example. I know of people who were, you know, it's a typical example of like, oh, let's shoot VR of a sports game, you know, and it's terribly dull to be sitting up, you know, because, you know, even a sports game has a wonderful dramaturgy on a flat screen. You know, all these shots tell a story, and just sitting there, that gets boring very, very quickly. But then they had shots behind the scenes with the coach and the sports people in the locker room, and people loved it because they never got to see that, and because it wasn't VR, they felt like they were there. So I think this idea of access privilege to worlds and peoples and play, I mean...
No, I agree. I mean, one of the reasons that particular piece of VR that I showed earlier, or clip of, if you can show a clip of VR, which you can't, one of the reasons David Attenborough and I wanted to do it is we realised that however big an audience, and we got a pretty big audience, half the British population watched when it went out, part of all of the series, that's a big audience. But we realised there were a lot of people we could never get to, and that's why we wanted to do the VR in this particular instance. And so we were targeting those people who don't watch television. And half the people at Alchemy, who work at Alchemy, don't have televisions, which I love, because I've got to appeal to them, and they've got to appeal to other people who don't have televisions. So we really like this idea, and it's grown out from there, of finding those people who don't interact with these stories anymore because they don't even watch television. So that's a big brief for Alchemy.
So are we actually saying that VR potentially isn't a television medium in itself? It's some kind of, it lives somewhere else?
Yes. Clear yes.
Okay, let's talk.
A question there.
Oh, we do have a question. Okay, if you could just, can we get a microphone over? And if you could just say who you are and who you work for, that'd be great.
My name's Ed Kelly. I'm a producer from the UK. I run a little company called Moon Studio, and we do adventure shows. And a bit like some of the people here, I recently tried VR. I was kind of a convert, if you like, got really excited by it. And I've been speaking to quite a few people who've been making VR, and just like you guys are, trying to sort of wrestle with the storytelling. And obviously adventure is kind of one area where it could work, but we've got all sorts of other ideas that we'd love to try out. But to be honest, we don't really know where to go. I mean, who is commissioning VR? That's my question.
ARTE.
Right.
I think you've hit on a problem that all producers face with VR, which is the broadcasters, if they do it, are probably adding it, and Britain adding it on as a little extra at the moment, and there's very little money in that, so you're already in a place so that you can do it. There's some advertising money from advertisers, but that probably takes you in the wrong direction. It's very, very hard. There's some manufacturing money, but the manufacturers have been appalling, as with 3D, are putting money where they should be, which is into content, if they want to sell their devices. But,
and are you having those discussions with them?
What?
With the manufacturers?
Yeah, we are, but it's pretty hard. I mean, we've got several things. I've done something with Google, and we've done things with everybody, but there are a lot of other motives and other reasons for often those happening, other than pure VR. And what is sad is I've sort of said to the manufacturer, well, you know, how many other companies are you going to support in the VR area? And they sort of say, well, we might give them a free phone. You know, well, great. You know, that's not going to go very far. So it's a really big problem. And then you get into the problem of if you go out and start shooting it yourselves, if you don't shoot it on the right way and the right format, it's actually worthless. So it's not like video. If you capture this amazing sequence, you know, it's a big hit on YouTube, there could be no return. So it is a very, very difficult medium at the moment to get into it. We were discussing this before. And there isn't any easy solution right now because the whole stitching thing gets very complicated. It's coming. And I think the fact you're thinking about and wanting to make it is great. But at the moment, there isn't that way to fund it. And that's the big problem.
Thomas, you
there's
described
a little
it.
bit,
Okay.
and I think and I think it's sort of these are regional differences, and that's very important when it comes to film or let's say
If you all
financing.
live in Canada, then you're fine.
Well,
there's lots of funding.
Yes and no. Actually, yes and no, because actually on the broadcasting side in Canada, it's very difficult to get license fees for.
That's because that's why you have me.
You know what? I didn't realize it until this moment. But for instance, we follow more or less a film financing model in the sense that we try to get a digital license fee from a broadcaster, and in Canada that actually will trigger funding for interactive work. And increasingly in Germany, the funds are starting to put money into interactive, sometimes interactive only, which is pretty good. And I'm hopeful that slowly there's going to be a change globally around how media is financed, because it's quite obvious that more and more is happening in the digital realm. The Canadians are very progressive, especially the Canadian Media Fund, where they're really even waiving experimentally, majority rights in order to actually work with, let's say, funds in other countries like Germany that actually have rules that would even preclude doing a co-production. So we're seeing changes in structure that I think this will come. So we have been able to finance our content production through license fees from ARTE, or actually in some cases Canadian broadcasters attached that to interactive financing and then made the film in a model that's actually pretty conventional, but not everywhere.
But by the way, to sort of be on a positive note, if I was you and you wanted to play around with VR, I would take a scene from an amazing piece, because I think Adventure's got huge potential. And I would shoot that in 2D. I wouldn't shoot it in 3D. And I'd have that as a calling card, because once, all the people you're going to talk to, once you've actually shot something, they'll know you're one step further down the road. I know that's not going to correct finance, but that's a step, and a positive step. And you can get, X number of GoPros relatively cheaply in a simple head. But don't try and leap in at the deep end of the whole thing, because that's quite complex as of this moment.
The learning curve is a little bit steep, for sure. But we're also moving into a time where theoretically the tools to do this, if people are trained and knowledgeable on how to use them, there is sort of a democratization of the ability to shoot 360, which is why we're also seeing a lot of very bad 360 content. When we did Polar Sea, there was one company called Yellowbird, and they wanted to rent us a rig for shooting at 15,000 euros a day. And it was just not possible, so we built our own. And now those technologies have really advanced, for sure. But it does take a lot of know-how.
Okay, let's have one more question from the crowd. How about this gentleman over here? Oh, sorry. Sure.
I'm Emma Rosa Diaz, Afro Mic Productions. My target audience is online, 16 to 24-year-olds, the cool kids that don't watch TV. I just wanted to ask Wolfgang, do you know the age demographic that downloaded ARTE 360?
I should, but I don't.
Actually,
probably younger than me, average.
Actually, you'll never know, because ARTE has a privacy policy that any data that's personal cannot be collected. I know, because I tried to collect it.
Do you think it's a younger audience that you're targeting?
I'm sure it's a younger audience, because what we know, that of course the whole audience we reach through internet is average 10 to 15 years younger than our average age of the linear audience, but that's not surprising. So it's probably more or less the same. But on the other hand, I wouldn't say it's an age thing. I put on the goggle on the head of my 89 years old dad, and it worked. He was a bit slow to understand, to move, but he did well. And I also put it on the head of my 3 years old granddaughter, actually. And she put it on, moved around 30 seconds, put it off, and said, "What's next?"
I think what's really neat is we showed some, and I'm sure you've had public showings with lots of people coming through, but we had one at Hot Docs last year, and there were 1,400 people roughly who came to see it, of all age groups. And that's when I realized that what's wonderful about this interactive medium is that it does not exclude you based on age. anywhere in that age range, because now the mode of interaction is something so intuitive. It's our ability to look somewhere. Whereas, other interactive mediums have left older people behind sometimes. All these buttons and all these things, and things are small and you can't see them, and it's a different world. And this is just, I'm somewhere else and I'm looking around and cool stuff happens. So and it blocks out actually all other distractions. So for the first time, you could actually concentrate on that story again.
I think one of the lovely things about this is it comes off a smartphone. Smartphones are right the way across the world, and plugged into some very simple headphones, you can start to get a taste of it. That's what's really exciting. We don't need to go and buy new televisions or sound systems or anything else. It's piped right into your head right there, and that is a very good medium.
And with that, we are out of time, so please give a round of applause to our panelists. Thanks, guys.